eternal perspective, and we know that Heavenly Father is going to win the war, you know? And so we got to just keep on persevering and standing up for what's right, even if it doesn't seem like we're gaining a lot of ground. So
I thought that too. I'm studying the Second Coming and the Millennium this in my religion class, and I thought about how with advocacy, like what you said, Britt, we don't always know, like the Heavenly Father's going to win no matter what. In the end, that's what's going to happen. You know, the Lord side's the winning side. So I don't think we need to think, oh, the world's going to come to destruction, even though it probably will. But we know that Heavenly Father, for being righteous, will bless us and bless our efforts. I think it's important that we don't think that it's a lost cause, even though it may feel like it majority of the time.
I definitely agree with that, because that's been actually my topic this entire semester is the same-sex marriage and the LGBT, like, things concerning them. And I'm just like, well, what in the world are we going to be able to do now? There's nothing I feel like we can do. But I guess it can turn, even though we feel like we have maybe lost a battle in one area, there are other areas that we can focus on. Like that example you gave, McKenna, the other weeks about having like this huge dam and there's a bunch of little holes in the dam. And so we just try to plug one or two of them rather than like, oh, we got to fix it all at once. Because there's tons of things such as like the sexual education that they're providing for high schoolers, or abortion, or how to strengthen families. There's just other ways to do it. But see, I agree that sometimes it is way disheartening. Me like, what else can we do? Like, we're already on the losing side. So I think that's important to remember that it's about other little things that we could probably focus on.
Who gave the talk in conference that talked about small and simple things? I think it was Elder Oaks. I can't remember. But I think as an advocate, I think with like social media nowadays, we see all these big things that are happening, and social media is a great platform, and you can rally people together and help you, you know, if you want to gather food or, you know, those kind of things. But I think because of the platform that we have of social media, I think sometimes we get distracted from how important this small side of advocacy is, because we see how effective the large scale is. But whoever's large scale now, I'm sure they started somewhere small, right? And just like anywhere in our life, I think it's okay to start small. That's where you need to start. You can't instantly go big. You can't instantly be a CrossFitter who is like in the CrossFit Games. Like, that's just not going to happen. Or you can't instantly go run Boston Marathon, but you can start small, make advocacy habits like serving the homeless or volunteering to teach a marriage class, or, you know, like by those things, then great things can happen. And I think this whole semester I've been like, I have no passion. I don't know what my passion is for advocacy. I have no idea. And I think we compare ourselves and our passions to those that we see that people have already found their passions. And it's okay to not have our passion right away and kind of let ourselves evolve into our passion. Because I have no passion yet. So I'm trying to make myself feel better.
That's definitely a really good way to put it. That sometimes, well, some people just know what their calling is in life, you know? They just know automatically that. Be like, oh yeah, I'm just meant to do this, or I'm meant to do that. So I really like how you said that it's meant to be evolved. It's something discovered. It's something that comes over time. Like, we don't know. There's a lot of things that are still going to happen to us today. Like, starting a family, we just might realize, be like, oh my gosh, motherhood is the greatest. Like, I want to really help mothers. Or, oh my goodness, there are so many. My child is interacting with a friend who comes from a single family, a single parent family. Like, then we find, oh, I really want to help this kid, and then voila, there's our passion. It takes time. That's a really good point. I really like that.
You know, I wrote my... Oh, sorry. Did I cut you off, Nicole?
I was just talking about Cynthia, hoping she's okay.
I know. It looks like she might be somewhere new. I don't know. She's not in her typical spot. Something I really liked when I did my community interview, I actually did it with my sewing teacher, because she's actually advocating for families by trying to put these courses online so she can get all these women, these moms out of sweatshops and into their homes again so they can be with their family. And Sister Lake actually really liked it because like I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but that's kind of what it reminded me of when you, McKenna, were saying like I don't know what my passion is. I think there's so many different ways to fulfill advocacy and find passions. And who would have thought like sewing would advocate for the family, you know? So I think it like takes time. And like the other thing is like if something interests you, you should just spend more time looking into it because like I wanted to, my whole life I wanted to sew, but I just never thought I was good at it, but I never practiced it. And so my husband was telling me about this documentary that says like, if you spend 20 hours on any talent you want, you can pretty much become adequate at it or like know if you want to do it.
You can get into just about anything.
He said you can, yeah, did you hear that?
What?
You can get back and you can get into it within 20 hours. So I think it's like giving yourself time to figure out what you want to do too.
Time and money, because sewing is not cheap. all the hobbies I want to do, I'm like, oh, I have to spend how much to start?
I know, like on campus, I took the sewing classes. That's how I learned. So now I'm in the upper classes, but it's like, yeah, they have these like $3,000 sewing machines, $2,000 sergers, and all this great material. But yeah, you can make things work with time. But yeah, I know what you mean. You're like, ah.
Okay. Hi, Cynthia. We're glad you're back. What did you like about the readings?
I was just, can you hear me now? Yeah. I was just going to say, I know you were talking about time previously and about having, your passion and making it work. I was going to specify like using time wisely because sometimes I personally feel that I spend so much time on things that really don't matter. And that's because most of the time I spend with my kids. But there's trivial things that you can just, drop and you don't have to, um, I don't know, worry about it. But using your time wisely, especially when advocating, and then putting your passion to good use, finding what your passion is, and then making the best out of it and kind of focusing on who you want to pass that passion on to or how you want to change things with your passion.
I think that's a really good point about passing your passion to someone else, because a lot of the time that's what advocacy is not just about you helping some person. It's also maybe encouraging them to also find their own passion or to encourage them. That's also has to do with leadership. The best leaders are those that help us find passion with ourselves. Like we can think of coaches, we can think of leaders in the church, at schools, who really have just encouraged us to find our own passion too. We can become that once we find our passion, but it does take time.
I follow this girl on Instagram, and she's an amazing cook. And that's why I follow her, because she's just always posts really good food pictures and ideas to cook with. And she's also really, really big into nutrition and working out and everything. And she made this post about how her daughter commented, like, Mom hates candy because she never eats it, right? Anyways, and she went on this whole spiel about how she advocates for a healthy lifestyle and for nutrition as an example to her kids, also on her website. But majority of the people that she's reaching are her 6 kids that are seeing her, sacrifice not eating a ton of sugar or working out or, taking the time to exercise her body and to fuel her body. And I think that's really important with advocacy is that we are our biggest advocates in our home. We are our examples to our children. What we're doing is going to be an example to our children. So if we're not, advocating or teaching them the importance of family or the importance of marriage between man and wife or those things, then what's the point of advocating large and big if we're not advocating in the home? It doesn't make sense because we have a direct impact in the people that are in our home.
Cool. Any other thoughts on that? If not, we'll go on to the next, I don't know, points. So there's a lot of questions. So I'll just kind of start with the first one that talks about the chapters that we read in Ryan Anderson's book, Building a Movement and the Long View, about how, well, the first question says, how do you think Christians can execute the following suggestions? And then that Christian needs to make a case that that biblical sexuality is appealing, to help those with same-sex attractions to not feel like they're excluded, defending religious liberty, and how we can help people find these appealing cases. And I thought that was really, it's so for me throughout the semester, I think Christians, it's really helped me as a Christian and to help other people to find the academic reasons to why we need to be sexually moral and be faithful to our families. And there's a reason behind everything, even though we may not understand it in the moment. And to help other people of Christian faith to see that too. One comment that he made in the book was that he's gone to a lot of college campuses, Christian college campuses, and he talked about them, and they all come back to him and like, thank you for teaching us the academic reasons behind why same-sex marriage is not good, rather than just knowing that God said it's bad. So I think it's important to also teach other Christians about it too, and work with them about making appealing cases for other people so that they can understand it.
I think also like it gives you more credibility, you know. I think your testimony can touch a lot of people's hearts, but a lot of people are not willing to listen or to open up their hearts, you know, to feel the spirit or to kind of not necessarily side on what you're saying, but just to understand what you're saying. And when you bring something other than religion to prove, it gives you more credibility, and it kind of leaves like a little, you know, oh, I should learn more about this, or a curiosity kind of, so they can go on and look at the non-religious side of why things should be done a certain way.
I kind of had this thought in this week, but like we did a lot of like reasoning why we need to advocate for families, but I feel like we didn't actually study that many statistics on the actual advocacy work, if that makes sense. I know I have in other classes, but I kind of thought that was interesting that we didn't really go into studies about same-sex couples and parenting. I know there's not a lot out there right now, but I just thought that was kind of interesting because they say use logical arguments, but then we didn't read any material that kind of, I don't know, that was like the science behind it, I guess. Unless I'm forgetting something. But
I actually did, because my topic is, that's been my topic. That's what my synthesis paper was about. So there is stuff out there. And I can send you like a link or two. There's websites that show some statistics. So I could send that to you if you'd like me to. But I agree. All right, I'll go on to the next kind of thoughts. The next questions are kind of interesting. They are, do you think United States will ever change their view about the redefinition of marriage? And do you think people will ever realize that the breakdown of family will cause the breakdown of society? So I guess these questions are thinking about looking ahead and be like, do you think people are going to change and regret what they did, or do you think they'll just keep going forward with it?
I don't think it's going to change. As a matter of fact, I think it's just going to get worse as time goes by, and there will be fewer of us who defend marriage and who defend the family. Um, I guess it's kind of like, you know, it's preparation for the second coming. It has to happen in order, you know, for us, for Jesus to come again. But it is sad how there's going to be fewer of those who side with gospel principles and with what is right, even when the facts have been backed up by science, than those who really want to follow it.
I kind of think that like we won't go back on the same-sex marriage laws because I think once it's a law, it's really hard to kind of. I don't think they really take away laws very easily. So I don't expect them to get rid of that. But I think that eventually they might realize that they need to strengthen families in order to strengthen society. I think people still place a strong emphasis on marriages and families in general and the importance of children. And so I could see like with time that the government might say, oh, we need to focus on having healthy families and encourage that. But
I think it's hard to break out of the cycle though, because a lot of the unhealthy families are in the low SES economies that where they experience just not discrimination, but they experience the lower income living. You know, they're on WIC, they're on food stamp, they're on all sorts of stuff. They're getting government assistant help. They're and they get in the cycle of where they have the grandma that had a baby when she was 16, the daughter had a baby when she was 16, and now the daughter's having a baby, and they all live together in multi-generational housing. I think once you get in a cycle like that, it's really hard to break out of. And there will be, I think, a couple people that will be able to break out. Statistically, have been people that go into college and whatnot. But I think middle class and higher class, I think because our families have been more intact, due to education and job stability and and going to college, all those different things. But we already are helping those who need financial support with families, and I think it's hard because they get so dependent on financial aid. Not financial aid. Is that what it's called? Government assistance. They get so dependent on it that they're not learning how to support their family or to make a strong family. And they do have a strong family bond. They definitely do, and you can see that. But it's not strong developmentally. It's a pattern, it's a cycle. And so they kind of have this self-fulfilling prophecy of like, oh, well, my mom got pregnant when she's 16. I'll probably get pregnant when I'm 16. My dad's not around, so I'm going to look for someone who we all naturally all look for father figure types. Naturally, they're not going to look for a father figure who's going to be around and help raise their child. So I think it's just hard to break out of that cycle. I don't know how we could help break out of that cycle because it's hard. And once the parents get divorced, the mother is immediately dropped into the lower SES. They're the poorest. So I don't know how you break out of that and help, because they do need financial assistance, but they also need to learn independency and breaking out of the cycle and not living up to those self-fulfilling prophecies that they have been. So I just don't know. I feel like it's kind of like it's not a lost cause, but I feel like at the same time, what is there to be done that hasn't already been done in that area?
I feel like that's definitely a good question because those are the families that genuinely need it most, but it's hard to always provide the government fund for them, one, because and then two, they find a dependence on it. It makes me think of the self-reliance program that the church is giving, about how they will help initially to start to give them the education they need, and they help them to budget themselves, and they can take classes, and they really apply as they apply themselves to the program and really start making those changes in their life. They're also required to pay back what they use to help other people. So it's not like they just take and then run with it. They take and then they use gospel principles and remember to give back in return. So it's really, I think I agree. It's definitely really hard to get people out of that cycle. I mean, it is possible, and we have seen that. It's just really hard because it has to do with a lot with the hearts of the people, whether they're really determined to get out of this really bad cycle. My husband and I actually just watched a movie of this called $1 Million Baby, I think it is, or something like that. And it's this 32-year-old girl who wants to take up kickboxing, and she does really well, and she wants to help her family, but her family don't want her help financially because they'll get off of welfare, and they feel this dependence on welfare and Medicaid and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just really helping the hearts of the people to realize that. And I guess that's what advocacy is about, to an extent, is trying to have it reach their hearts to that they can change.
My husband and I were with some friends, we're laughing. Virginia is a really expensive area to live in, right? There's a lot of people that are on government assistance because it's super expensive area to live in. And my husband and I don't make the cutoff for, financial assistance. And but we're living just fine. Like there's nothing, we're not like super poor. We are poor, but we're not like so poor that we need government assistance, and we don't have, holes in our clothes, so we are very grateful. We're fine. We're just fine. But we were laughing because we have friends who, not friends, but a friend's friend who we were talking with, we had met, who live on government assistance, and they're living the exact same way we are. And if we made like 10 grand less a year, we could be able to qualify for all these government assistance needs. So it's kind of like, well, why would they? They have iPhones, they have plasma screen TVs, they have brand new cars. It's not like they're living poor with like, I want to get a job and I want to work and I want to make my own money, when you're given this money that you're living just as good as my husband and I are, who work and budget and do all these things. I totally agree, Nicole. It totally has to do with your heart, of whether you want to be self-reliant. But a lot of it is tradition of like, you watched your mom or your dad who was on government assistance, and they lived just fine, and you got all these awesome presents for Christmas, or and then now you're in the same situation and you're like, well, we're fine. I can stay home. I don't have to work. We can live just fine off of this and have everything I want. So, but I totally agree. It has to do with the heart of whether or not you want to change and you want to become better and you want to provide for your family. You get stuck in this pattern, in this hole.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, because like my husband and I were looking at like doing summer sales over the summer, and we actually had to we looked at it and we're like, if he makes this much, we then are off Medicaid and off of anything like assistance, which then we have to make up a certain amount of money to even be at the same level we were at. So like there's this gap associated with moving off of government assistance and getting your own health care and stuff. And so it was like, we could make, like you said, $10,000 more a year and still be just as poor as we were when we were on government aid. The difference is being you're self-reliant, So.
And paying for medical care sucks, to be honest. So it's expensive. And my husband works for the government, so I even get government subsidized healthcare. It's awesome, but it's still expensive. Like living is expensive. And you have to budget. It's this feeling of entitlement of because I am so poor, I get to have all this. And I think if we could close the gap a little bit, or have this kind of a weaning feeling for these people, where you start to decrease based on how much they're making now, how many children they have, debt, things like that. If we were able to wean them off, then I kind of like sleep training. It sucks for the first couple of weeks, right? And then it's great. I think if we could kind of sleep train those who are on government assistance, I think it would be okay. But we don't do that. We're just like all or nothing, right? And I think that's where people get really, well, why would I work harder? Why would I work 3 jobs to make ends meet when I can work 1 job or no jobs and be just fine?
My dad used to say that we're from Mexico, and my dad used to say that in the United States, you either have to be very, very poor or you have to be very, very rich. You can't be middle class, because if you're middle class, then you're stuck with the worst of the worst. But like Britt said, I think it has to do with self-reliance. The difference is, in one of them, you're self-reliant. And then you, McKenna, mentioned the entitlement, how when someone's on government assistance for so long, you feel entitled to get more and more and more. And I think we talked about in a couple of lessons back, we don't want to feel entitled. We need the less entitled people, the better for our country.
I think we might be done with her time, or pretty close.
Okay, we lost Nicole. I don't know where she went.
Oh yeah, I heard some noise. Maybe she messaged on this. Sorry, everyone. My phone freaked out. It was great to work with all of you this semester. Good luck with finals.
Okay.
Okay.
Cynthia, question. So Bray and I are talking about meeting the same time next week on Wednesday to do that Amazing Grace thing we have to do. Does that give you enough time to watch the 2-hour video and like complete all the questions and everything?
So it does. The only thing is I'm going to graduation next week. And
Exciting.
I leave Wednesday actually. Could
Okay.
we meet like Tuesday, or is that not enough time for you guys?
I don't know. Personally, we don't have to meet in a group. We can just people too.
What we could do is Nicole had emailed us saying she'd like to get it done sooner rather than later. So maybe Cynthia and Nicole can meet on Tuesday or Monday or whatever. And then McKenna and I can meet on Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay. That sounds good.
I'll talk to Nicole then.
Okay. And if not, I can always do something to watch.
And then I know Kiara, she's going to need to meet with someone probably.
Yeah.
So I don't know where she is this week, but
yeah.
Okay, I can summarize now.
Okay.
So we talked about today a lot about starting small with different efforts, and that small things can make a difference, even though it doesn't seem like it sometimes. We talked about we haven't lost the war and that there's still hope, and that we just need to keep on standing up for what we believe in and what is true. We talked a lot about advocacy and finding our passions within advocacy and figuring out our own way to advocate for our community and our beliefs. Then we talked about how sometimes it takes a lot of money or time or to figure out exactly what you're interested in. We talked a lot about how we have a direct impact on our families, and that's like a really good way of advocating for our families. So you don't want to ever underestimate what you're doing within your own home, which I really liked that. And then I think that's about it. We just talked a lot about, we talked about government welfare and how we can help close the gap between being off Medicaid assistance or like government assistance and being on it, because there seems to be a big deficit. And Cynthia mentioned about how her dad said you can either be really poor or rich in America. And I think that's pretty accurate. So we talked about some of the social issues around getting off of welfare. So is there anything else you guys want to add?
No.
Okay. Well, it's really great working with you guys this semester.
Great. We've had some great discussions. Normally, I feel like Google Hangouts is the worst, but it's been great this semester.
Yes.
It's been beneficial to my learning.
Great.
Good luck on your finals, girls.
Thanks, you too. Good luck driving to Idaho, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Congrats on graduating. It's awesome.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
We'll
guys.
see you.